Hello plant lovers, welcome back to my humble channel, which is really all about me sharing some of the things I've learned about some of the things I've been growing here in Melbourne, southern Australia, which is a temperate climate, the equivalent of a climate zone about 10 in the US, and parts of southeast England. Warm hot summers, chilly wet winters, but no freezing. Anyway, that's me climatically. Let's talk about Paphiopedilum orchids. And I did make a little video, which I might just put a link to here, about basic care for these a couple of weeks ago. And this baby here just had a flower spike coming, and we were comparing it to its poor humble sibling, this one, which was part of my experiment of deciding whether or not they really were cold orchids and could be grown outside here in Melbourne. As you can see, the result of that experiment is a resounding yes, no. So this didn't die outside, but it didn't thrive. This one was inside and it's flowered. We covered basic care in my previous video, but just to recap, these are a low light orchid. This room has an easterly aspect, so it gets filtered morning light. It gets fairly strong morning light, obviously, as summer progresses, but in winter these were getting pretty low light from that direction, and then fairly moderate ambient light for the rest of the day. Not very bright. So I would say, from my humble experience of the orchids I've got, these are the most dark tolerant in terms of low light space. I think more so than Phalaenopsis orchids, which I have experienced like a little bit more morning sun. There you go. We also covered that Paphiopedilum orchids don't have pseudobulbs, as you can see. So you don't want to let them dry out. They don't really have a rest period. They obviously ease up on water in winter and ramp it up in summer, depending on your temperatures. But they don't like to dry out. They like to be kind of evenly moist. Not overly wet, because you'll then start to rot the roots, but not allowing them to dry out. So these two babies have come into flower, and I'm so excited because it's the first time. Now, I can't really claim all the glory for the yellow one because it did have a flower spike when I bought it, but this baby didn't. And in fact, it looked a whole lot like its poor sibling that was forced to live outside like Cinderella, who didn't die, but didn't thrive, and might live to tell another tale, and hopefully will flower again either this season or next. So this is really all about flowering, how to get them to flower. First thing is that they only flower when they're mature. So the plant needs to be basically grown before it will produce a flower. The other thing is, I've only ever really seen them in bloom in late winter, early spring here in Melbourne, and this is what happened with these two. I'm not sure. Now, it'll be interesting to see with this one, now that it's happier in this environment, whether it progresses to flower spike as the season progresses into spring and summer. I don't know. Let's watch this space. But so far my experience is that they are a late winter, early spring flowerer. So to get them to flower, you need the same basics that you need for all orchids, which is the right light, the right temperature, the right water, and then you're done. And I have to say, they are fairly easy and low maintenance. I give them a little bit of fertilizer every now and then. I just make sure they don't dry out. They're not in particularly great room for plants, I'd have to say, because it's reasonably dark and doesn't get that much strong light. But look, they are very happy. And curiously, the name Paphiopedilum is Greek, as most of them are. It was named in 1886, and so here's the weird connection between me and these. The Pfaff of Paphiopedilum is drawn from the city of Paphos in Cyprus, where I spent my childhood. Curious connection. And the pedilum is Greek meaning slipper, and that is the common name for these slipper orchids. They originate in Southeast Asia, so largely the peninsula, sort of coming down from southern China all through Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, down to Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, all the way across to Papua New Guinea. None in Australia, which is curious. They all tend to be terrestrial, and they can vary in altitude. So when you're thinking of buying one, or you found one, just do a bit of research, because some of them are higher altitudes, can take colder temperatures. Some of them are lower and will need more of a warm to hot environment with plenty of humidity. So do a little research. These are all cold climate orchids. Well, we discovered they're not that cold because they didn't thrive outside. But anyway, we can call them cold. That meaning, though, that they don't need hot tropical environments and lots of humidity. I do give them a bit of a mist every now and then, but they don't need super humid environments. Let's take a closer look at the flowers, because I've always loved the look of these and always thought they were just too difficult to grow, but I'm here to tell you they're not, because I'm no expert. But the flowers have always looked to me slightly carnivorous with this amazing pouch that they have here. And you'd imagine it serves a similar purpose. So I was doing a bit of research and found out, yes, it kind of is the same strategy as a carnivorous plant, but with a different outcome. So what they want you to do, flying insect, is to be attracted to the flower. There is no fragrance to these that I can smell. Maybe a fly or a moth could smell them, but there is no fragrance. So it's the color that attracts the insect, gets drawn in, and it falls down into the pouch here. Now, there is nothing in there that dissolves the insect and turns it into brunch. Inside is a slippy surface, so the insect can't just crawl out. But there is a pathway at the very back of the flower which leads the insect to crawl up underneath the stamen under there and pollinate the flower. It is an amazing bit of design. So all of this is sticky and the insect just keeps falling down, and the only pathway will lead it to fertilization. And that's how these orchids have evolved. They're pollinating strategy. So they look carnivorous, but they're vegan. The flowers are amazing, and there are lots of species you can get, species orchids, and then many hybrids, which are in most orchid shops and often florists as well. Again, my trick is orchids tend to be discounted when the flower is about to die or has just died. So if you've got a little bit of confidence or you don't mind risking the money, maybe buy them at half price when the flower's died and see if you can't nurture it for a year until it blooms again. Maddie's handy hint on how to grow your orchid collection by never paying retail. So the two species we have here, this is a hybrid, they're both hybrids, and this is called Ruby Leopard, which is a cross between Black Jazz and Firefighter. Ta-da! And I will put the name above here too, and in the text below so you can have a look. It has the most fabulous mottled leaves, and its yellow friend here is called Duo de Citron, 2 lemons. It's a fantastic color. And what I've discovered about this, again, I know nothing, so all of this is through my own experience, is that this orchid is sequential. Now this one is a single bloomer. There is just one bloom at the end of the spike. However, this one had a flower here, it now has a flower here, and it has another bud here, and I think there is another bud that has formed below it. So I wonder how many blooms it's going to have, but that's very exciting. So I'm going to get quite a few months worth of blooming out of this. The flowers themselves have no fragrance, but they are so sculptural and bizarre looking that they're just wonderful to look at. So the fragrance thing is not a deal breaker for me. They look amazing. It does last quite a long time. This one, I would say, oh, nearly a month. And this one has only really just opened, so I don't know how long that's going to last. There might be variations between ones, I don't know, but it seems to be a fairly long-lasting flower. Good value for money. And as this one is sequential, I'm getting basically months and months and months worth of colour and excitement out of that one. There we are, plant and orchid lovers. My Paphiopedilum 101. This one has the most fabulous leaves, so even when it is going quietly about his business and not blooming, it's still a very beautiful plant to have. This one is much strappier and has less colour in its leaves, but it has, as you can see, and I'll show you in a minute, it has a new growth coming up. So what tends to happen is when the plant flowers, it does die off and produce a pup, which produces a new plant, which then matures, which then flowers. Depends from type to type though, so we'll see what happens with both of these. This one already has its new growth, this one doesn't. I hope it doesn't just die like a big aloe and there's just a pile of dry leaves. Anyway, watch this space. Thank you for watching my little channel. As I said, it's all really about the experience I've gained growing these things here in Melbourne. I might mention that we're also in a rental house while our house is being renovated, so conditions aren't perfect, so I'm still managing to get things to bloom, which makes me very happy. Take care wherever you are, enjoy the things you're growing. Feel free to ask me a question. I know nothing, but I've learned through my own experience and trial and error. And the reason I was making these films is that I did find it quite difficult to find information that was kind of relevant to me and my environment. Now, every environment is going to be different. Even different houses in the same city will have different microclimates because of the sun, the humidity, the breeze, whatever it might be. So you're going to have to figure out your own success story, really. Interestingly, if you've got the resources and the time and the energy, is to experiment like I did with these two, growing one outdoors and one indoors. The outdoors didn't die, but it didn't flourish. Indoors flourished and has flowers. So again, if you're kind of not sure and you're prepared to take the risk, financially and emotionally, you can maybe get 2 of something and test different areas and see which one works the best. Anyway, thanks for watching. Next week, it's all about Chinese ground orchids, which are suddenly all in bloom, so I have to show you mine. Thank you for watching. Do hit subscribe and do hit like if you want to. See you next week.